Still repping my NaNoWriMo pride. Hi everyone and welcome back, and welcome to the first video of this year's Preptober series. I am so excited that nano season is finally upon us, well, in about a month, and that fall is here. Fall is my favorite season. I love the rain and I love the leaves changing color, and that it gets so dark and cozy, and you can light candles and curl up with blankets, and it's not like I do that every day of every year, but still, I'm excited. Now throughout this Preptober series, I'm going to share some tips for NaNoWriMo. I'm also going to share what I'm going to write. Next week I'm going to talk about music and writing, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. In today's video, as you can tell by the title, I'm going to talk about how you find the time to write when you're really busy, and how to win nano while being busy. I thought I'd start off by telling you what makes me very busy this November, and then I'm going to get into the tips that I've got for you guys. Now the reason November is going to be quite busy for me is that I'm going to be gone for about a third of it. I mentioned this in last week's video. In about 2.5 weeks, Marcus and I leave for Japan, and we're going to be there for almost a month. We come home on the 9th of November. So that means that about a third of the month has passed while we're gone. We are, however, going to still write when we're in Japan, but it's probably going to be the bare minimum, just because we want to explore and experience Japan as much as possible while we're there. Apart from that, we might also be moving in November or early December. It's not decided yet. We are still looking at places, but we are fairly hopeful that it's going to happen, and that both means that we have to pack up everything we own, and it also might mean that we might have to have showings of this place either before we go to Japan, which I would prefer, even though it would be stressful, or after we come home. After Japan, I am also going to start uploading the videos we make from Japan, and I'm aiming, as I said, for 1 to 2 a week, and that's going to eat up a fair bit of my time. I'm hoping to find the time in Japan to edit a fair bit so that I have a few ready, so that I can sort of balance out, like I'm a couple of videos ahead, so I'll write for a bit and get on par or get ahead, and then do videos, and then like alternate between the two, so that I get as much as possible done for both of them, because I'm super excited both for NaNoWriMo and for the videos to come out, and I want to do both, and I want to do both ASAP. So hopefully I'll get into a good rhythm of how to do that, especially if we're also going to move and pack and unpack, different order, but yeah, at the same time. Now, as you know, if you've been around for a couple of weeks at least, I am currently on a sabbatical. I do not have a job to go to. This is of course a plus. It means that I don't have to spend 8, 9, 10 hours at work every day and commuting there and home and do all the like home chores and do the writing and, in my case, the videos and stuff. That's a huge plus. And I probably wouldn't have been this ambitious about it if I also had to work. However, I am treating the videos and the writing and other stuff as my job, and I'm not going to stop doing any of the things in November so that I can just focus on writing. In order for me to make this work though, I am still hoping to, you know, spend my time wisely and get ahead where I can get ahead. And that sort of segues me into the tips, where the first tip is to try to get ahead when you can. And I'm primarily now talking about nano, but if you have other things that eats up your time and things that are going to be continuous throughout the month, try to get ahead when you can get ahead. If you have a spare day somewhere where you're not working or not doing anything else that takes up your time, try to write as much as possible, and hopefully that will put you maybe a day or two ahead of where you need to be. And that is really going to help in the long run of things, because you're going to need it. Everyone does. Now, for you to manage to do nano and find the time for it, it's gonna be tricky. Most likely it's gonna be tricky. And there are also gonna be days where maybe you have the time, but you don't have the drive, or you're sick, or you don't feel like it, or something like that. So don't just assume that, oh, well, I have Saturday off, I'll write like 15,000 words then, because you technically have the time for it. It probably isn't gonna happen. It could happen, you definitely can write that much in a day, but there are gonna be times, even if you plan ahead that, well, on Saturday I have all this time to write, And then Saturday rolls around and maybe you're sick, or you get dragged into something else, or you just don't have the drive, or something else comes up, and then you don't have that time. Because sadly, inspiration and time don't always go hand in hand. And sometimes when you have a lot of time on your hands, you find excuses to not use that to writing. If you have 10 hours in a day where you could write, chances are you're not going to write for the entirety of those 10 hours. You're going to catch up on YouTube, or you're going to read a book, or see a friend, or talk to your mom, or whatever, and then suddenly you have 2 hours left until the day is up and you've written nothing. And that's why I say hunker down when you can and write as much as you can then. And don't just put it off and be like, oh, but that day in the future I can get all the words. Try to do it now. No, now, because now it's probably October when you're watching this, but you get what I mean. Also remember that Nano is about getting the words. It is not about getting a perfect first draft, because there kind of isn't anything like a perfect first draft in the first place. But all words count, and if you can just squeeze in 5 minutes of writing, that is bound to get you maybe 100 words, at least 50. And if you can only write for 5 minutes, at least you'll get something. And all the somethings count in November. Also, if you have the time before November starts or early on in November, figure out how long it takes you, how much time you need to write a certain amount of words. Ideally, figure out how long it takes to write you the 1667 words you need per day for Nano to finish. But if you can't do that, if you don't have that time or that story or whatever that lets you write 1667 words, sit down and write for a while. Do a word sprint and see how many words you get in 10 minutes. 15 minutes. Now this isn't an exact science. Maybe you sit down for 20 minutes and you get 1,000 words. But the next time you sit down for 20 minutes, you only get 500. It's not an exact science, but hopefully you'll be able to find some sort of middle ground, some sort of average, and then you can use that to calculate how much time a day you need to spend writing. As I said though, it's not an exact science. Sometimes you get distracted, or you have absolutely no idea what's going on in your story, or you simply write slower than you did before. So don't bet on always getting 500 words in 20 minutes, but try to see if you can find sort of an average, and maybe set that average slightly lower than what you've managed to write. Say you've averaged about 600 words per 20 minutes, then maybe set your expected words for 20 minutes at 500, because that gives you a little bit of leeway, a little bit of wiggle room, and hopefully you get the words done. Now with this example, if you average, say 500 words per 20 minutes, you need just over an hour of active writing time per day to be on par for NaNoWriMo. And that might sound like a lot, or it might not sound like anything at all. It depends on what your life looks like in general and what you want to be able to spend your time on outside of writing. It might also be beneficial to figure out if you can have a routine. Can you write first thing in the morning? Can you write the last thing you do before you go to bed? Could it take 10 minutes out of your lunch break, or 5 minutes out of your commute, or something else, to just squeeze some words out? Because again, all words count during NaNoWriMo, and they don't have to be good, and that's a plus. Because it might not be possible for you to sit down for, say, an hour straight every day and crank out those words and then, you know, close your laptop and go do other things. That might not be possible. You might not be able to have that chunk of time you can just take out of your day, use for writing, and then move on. Now what I will say is, say that you've calculated that it takes you about an hour to get your daily word count in, and then you split that into, say, 5-minute sessions throughout the day. That is probably not going to give you the same result as if you sat down for 10 or 15 minutes at a time, or 15-20 minutes at a time. And that's because it always takes a while to get into the writing zone. At least for me, I have noticed that even if I'm super excited and I'm super, you know, interested in my story and what I'm writing right now, it still takes me a while to get moving. And that is even if I sit down and like put my fingers to the keys and write. Even if I write start to finish for 5 minutes, I am probably not going to get a third of what I would have gotten if I'd written for 15 minutes straight. This might be different for you, but that's how it works for me. And I've also found over the years that about a 15-20 minute sprint is the best for me. 5 minutes are too short. I've done half-hour sprints, but at the end it doesn't really feel like you're sprinting anymore. Whereas if you go for 15-20 or maybe even 10 minutes, you have that timer ticking down and you manage to stay focused for that time. Now, in order for you to get this to work, you might have to put off things that you would like to do. I would basically say take, not inventory, but like consider, okay, do I have to vacuum 3 times a week? Or is it fine with once or twice per week in November? Do you have to go to every family function, and do you have to go out clubbing and whatever else you might be doing? Do you have to do it in November? Clearly, I'm not saying to completely let yourself or your home go, and I'm not saying that you should rob yourself of everything fun. But if you're serious about doing NaNoWriMo and winning NaNoWriMo, there might be some sacrifices you have to make. I realized just how sad this sounds. It sounds like Nano is going to eat up all your time and you're not going to have time over for anything else. That is not true. But if you want to do it, you're going to have to prioritize it. That's kind of what life is. And I'm saying this to myself just as much as to you guys, that take the time to do Nano and do it well if you want to do it. Find a good balance between fun and work. And by work, I now mean NaNoWriMo, but also other work if you have that. I'm going to talk more about rewards in an upcoming video, so stay tuned for that. But use them. If you're just dying to watch the latest episode of insert favorite show here, do, but use it as a reward. Tell yourself that I have to have written 1,000 words or reached my daily Nano quota or whatever before I get to watch the show I want to watch. Don't be too hard on yourself, but definitely use reward systems, because that's how I get by, and therefore you should too. No, but it helps, because it's so easy to be like, I could write tomorrow, I can do all these boring things tomorrow, next week, in a year, and then you fail Nano. Now, the last thing on this list should maybe have been the first one, but it is to inform people ahead of time what you're doing. And if you don't want to share with them that you're actually doing NaNoWriMo, even though it's a really cool thing to do, but if you don't want to share exactly what you're doing because you don't want their questions, then just tell them you're going to be really busy in November. If you've done this ahead of time, it's usually easier to turn things down. If you've told people that, yeah, in November I can't really make any more plans than the ones I already have, people tend to understand. But if you mid-November you get invited somewhere and you're like, no, I'm busy, they might not receive it as well, even though you're always entitled to say no. But also it can be harder for you to say no. At least I'm like that. It's getting really personal, this video. But I have a tendency to say yes to things, even if I am busy, even if I am tired, even if I'm, for whatever reason, kind of shouldn't, without thinking about like maybe I shouldn't have. And if you've then prepared people ahead of time that, hi, I'm gonna be busy in November, see you in the last week of October or sometime in December, it's usually easier for people to accept that. So that's it. That's my first Preptober video. I am sorry if it was a little all over the place. I have better ones coming up. Next week I'm going to talk about music and writing. The week after that I'm going to give you some quick tips for NaNoWriMo. And the week after that I'm going to announce to you what I'm doing for my NaNoWriMo this year, what project I'm working on. I also have some videos already planned for November, and a couple of them are going to have to go up while I'm going on vacation. So I should get on filming those too. But I'm super excited for, well, both Preptober and NaNoWriMo, and I will see you in next week's video. Bye!